Welcome to the Ye Old Desert Scrounger Power Hour podcast. We invite you to get comfortable, kick off the shoes, and stay a while. Welcome back to part 2 of the Ye Old Desert Scrounger Power Hour podcast, featuring our guest Wyatt McKenzie. Wyatt, I know that you've read a good chunk of the works of Aleister Crowley. Can you talk a little bit about his writings and how they've influenced you as an individual?
Yes, I'm a huge fan of Crowley. I've probably read more Crowley than anyone else in my life. There's other occultists that I like too, and there's even modern occultists that such as Thomas that I'm into, and many others. But Crowley is someone that I discovered at a young age through some bands that I got into. When I was like 12 years old, me and my brother used to go to this record store called Big B's. I don't know if you remember Big B's on Maryland Parkway in Las Vegas. And I would go into like the goth industrial section, and I started discovering these sort of amazing and very mystical occult-oriented bands. Current 93 was one of my favorites, and Death in June, Psychic TV, Coil, Nurse with Wound, Throbbing Gristle, just bands that were basically like the music was it wasn't like like your typical kind of music, like in the case of Current 93, which is actually named after the whole thelemic current, which is associated, thelema and agape, the Greek words for will and love, in Crowley's philosophy, both add up through a process of gematria, which is a form of Kabbalist numerology. Both of those words add up to the number 93, and anytime that two words, actually, I guess that would be isocephia because they're Greek words, and the Hebrew is gematria, Greek is isocephia. Anyways, anytime that two words have the same numerical value, they have a connection. They're supposed to be synonymous. So Current 93 started out as a very Crowley inspired band. They started out industrial, and then they turned into a folk band, and their lead singer David Tibet is one of my favorite still living poets, and he's basically just a poet. He doesn't really play any instruments. He will hire a bunch of other people to come in and play instruments and make this beautiful music, and he'll just kind of speak this sort of intense, very magical, mystical poetic verse over it. And they've always been one of my favorite bands. And when I was 12, I just found them to be just completely it was a mystical experience sitting in my room and lighting incense and listening to them. But I knew that all of these bands were very much inspired by Aleister Crowley, so I would go out and buy his books. And when I was 12, most of his books completely went over my head, with the exception of two books. One was called Magic Without Tears, which were a series of letters and correspondences that he would write back and forth to a fellow sister that was associated with Astra Margentum, one of his magical orders. And another of his books that connected with me at that age was called Liber Aleph, which I guess were a series of just sort of philosophical chapters that were written towards his magical son at the time in 1918. And his magical son was a man by the name of, I believe, Charles Stanfield Jones. And Crowley would, of course, later dismiss this man as no longer being his magical son, because Crowley was a character and really had trouble holding on to relationships throughout his life. If you look at his biography, there's basically no woman or man that really stayed by his side through his entire life. I mean, he had successors. Carl Germer, was actually a Holocaust survivor, who would go on to um, become professor and inherit, Crowley's remains and all of his books and sort of keep the OTO and Astrum Argentum going. So there were people that stuck by Crowley, but it was rare, because he just had such a, he was a fiery personality, and he would fall out with people pretty regularly, especially women, but and his own children. But I I would grow up and, I would kind of go phase in and out. When I was 16, I picked the Book of the Law back up, and I remember, like, the Book of the Law, when you read it, I think even if you have no knowledge of what it really means, if you read it, something in your subconscious understands it. It's written that way. That was a book that was channeled by a praetor human force when Crowley was on his honeymoon in Egypt with his first wife, Rose Edith Kelly.
Was its name Iowis?
Yes, Iowis was the praetor human intelligence. Apparently, they actually went into the Great Pyramid, and they went into the king's chamber. I believe at nighttime, in the middle of the night when no one else was there, and Crowley wanted to impress his wife by shooing the sylphs, which the sylphs are an elemental spirit associated with air. They're kind of like fairies. And so Crowley performed the preliminary invocation of the Goetia, which the Goetia is a book. It's a compendium of 72 demons that supposedly King Solomon had utilized to build the tabernacle. But there's an opening invocation in the Ars Goetia that is just basically supposed to put you in a magical mindset where you invoke the Lord of the universe, and you have the powers to basically bring anything you want into the room, or into fruition. And so he performed the preliminary invocation of the Goetia, and she didn't see any sylphs, but she immediately started hearing voices in her head from the god Horus, telling her that there was something very important that needed to be done. And he didn't believe her at first, so he took her to a museum. And he kind of was laughing at first because she was walking past all these different depictions of Horus, but she brought him, through an act of total synchronicity, she brought him to a stele, an Egyptian stele that was marked by the number 666, which was a very personal number to Crowley. Not because of its link to the devil, but because it's actually a number linked to the sun in Hebrew Kabbalism.
I've heard of numerologists stating that the number 666 is not actually an evil number.
Yeah,
Number 13 is not an unlucky number.
yeah,
It doesn't matter if you believe in numerology. The people that are running things believe in it.
exactly. It works. I mean, I've done experiments with Hebrew numerology and English numerology, and it's kind of crazy that that in Hebrew gematria, the 4-letter word for the ineffable God, the Tetragrammaton, Yod He Vah He, adds up to 26. Well, if you take simple English gematria and you take the words God, also adds up to 26. I mean, that's two different languages. That's just, in my mind, that was just beyond conception. Also, Lam adds up to 26, which is really interesting because that is that is an entity that Crowley would draw and give as a gift to Kenneth Grant, and Kenneth Grant would associate it with gray aliens later on. A lot of people believe that Aiwass and Lam are one and the same, but Lam is also a Tibetan word that means the path. So Lam, God, both add up to 26 in English gematria, and 26 is the number of the great ineffable God in in Hebrew gematria, and also I believe the words for unity and I want to say love. They're two very very important words that both add up to 13, and if you add those both together, you get 26.
Lam is Lam. And
Yeah.
people that are listening, pause the recording and Google Lam and Crowley, and you will see that the representation of Lam that Crowley drew for his friend is almost identical to the typical representations that you see drawn out of the gray aliens.
Gray aliens, yeah.
Yeah, and Crowley actually also has another paranormal link. He performed some rituals on the banks of Loch Ness.
Yes. Oh yeah. That's where he built the Boleskine House. He had designed that house for he had designed that house. He had so much money inheritance from his rich Quaker family. They made a beer, kind of beer. I think it was called Crowley Ale. I'm not entirely sure, but they had a lot of money, and he had so much money from various inheritances that he was able to design a house on the banks of the Loch Ness to meet the exact dimensions in order to carry out this ritual from a grimoire called um, a Brimlin the Mage, The Secrets of a Brimlin the Mage. And it's a very, very powerful and dark ritual where you're basically supposed to invoke the four guardians of hell and all of their servitors, and then you're supposed to banish them one by one so that you can clear the air and make way to meet your holy guardian angel. And supposedly Crowley didn't finish the ritual, so that house is just completely haunted with spirits, dark spirits. Jimmy Page would go on to buy the house later on, and there's tons of you can read tons of hilarious stories about builders working there that were told to get out by dark spirits, people that that would hear evil monsters breathing in rooms and stuff like that. And
it's my understanding that there was a man living with Crowley for some time there and had to leave because the house was quite literally driving him mad.
Yeah, I want to say that he's had various people live with him. I know that his wife Rose Edith Kelly was living there with him for a while with their daughter that would go on to die of I believe typhoid. But yeah, he had various people living with him, and yeah, a lot of people. He never finished the ritual. He was obsessed enough to design the house to the exact dimensions, but he never got around to finishing it. So, which is interesting because he finished a lot of really other impressive stuff in his life.
I wonder if it's possible that the creature or creatures that people are seeing there has some magical aspect to it that links back to Crowley, and that's the reason that no body has ever been found, or no definitive proof, because it has more of a spiritual leaning than a physical leaning.
Could be completely linked to that exact ritual. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of demons are supposedly supposed to be serpentine in nature, or appear like serpents, or maybe even sort of like strange dinosaurs. Makes a lot of sense.
As mentioned in part 1 of this podcast, Wyatt McKenzie and Thomas Carlson are working on a project called Dark Planets of Dead Dreams. This is a cut off that upcoming album called Holding Holiness.
Something higher has always been declared. But when I first saw you, I felt heaven beyond compare. I felt it in this room, I feel it in this sphere. I remember it like yesterday, hope to always hold you near. Before the sublime and divine design was something firm to grasp. When you came for the first real time, I held holiness in my hands. I see generations yet to come and generations past. I see a grain of sand become a universe collapsed. Together we will explore the world and life on foreign lands. No matter if you believe in God or not, my love will not collapse. I will do my best to always help you find your way. When I look into your eyes, we go to places far away. Generations past, generations yet to come. I see a grain of sand become a universe undone. There's no need to pray to heaven, your love's beyond some God's command. When you came for the first real time, I held holiness in my hands. I see generations past, generations yet to come. I see a grain of sand become a universe undone. There's no need to pray to heaven, your love's beyond some God's command. When you came for the first real time, I held holiness in my hands. Together we'll explore the world and life on foreign lands. No matter if you believe in God or not, my love will not collapse. I will do my best, always help you find your way. When I look into your eyes, we go to places far away.
How about Crowley's link to NASA?
Well, that would be through Jack Parsons. Jack
Wow.
Parsons was I believe he grew up in Pasadena, and he was a scientist, and he grew up with the idea of landing on the moon, and he also got affiliated with the Ordo Templi Orientis. There was a big chapter in Pasadena at that time. There was a famous silent film actress, Jane Wolfe, I believe, who was associated with that same chapter, and she had spent a lot of time with Crowley and was she was one of his disciples that looked upon him very favorably, had very good experiences with him when she was living with him at the Abbey, which was a commune that he had in Italy. But anyways, Jack Parsons would go on to create the rocketry that would go on to, be used for, the rockets that took us to the moon. But he started the Jet Propulsion's laboratories JPL, which is a part of NASA, is still a part of NASA. And there are some rumors that he had some involvement with the Manhattan Project as well, and that he was obsessed with bringing Babylon, which is a Thelemic, sort of a Thelemic goddess, but she's also written in the Book of Revelations as being kind of the Scarlet Woman or the Scarlet Whore who would bring upon the apocalypse, riding a seven-headed beast. But in Crowley's religion, she is looked at much more like a kind of goddess, a fierce but beautiful goddess. And so Jack Parsons became obsessed with doing rituals, actually, and he would do these rituals with L. Ron Hubbard before L. Ron Hubbard started Scientology. And they were sex magic rituals. So they were, I guess, trying to achieve orgasm over the course of every day over the course of like several months period, in order to try to bring about a physical manifestation of the goddess Babylon on this planet. And supposedly, Jack Parsons had some kind of link to the Manhattan Project, and he viewed the first detonation of the atomic bomb as basically being the ultimate, like, opening up the void and bringing Babylon in. And so yeah, this woman, Marjorie Cameron, I guess had approached him through the OTO, or somehow he had met this woman, and she had red hair, and she very much to him embodied all of the physical aspects of Babylon. And she had come after after L. Ron Hubbard had gone off with Jack Parsons' ex-wife and stolen a bunch of money from him, and sort of screwed him over and left. He met this woman, Marjorie Cameron, and she was a brilliant occultist, and she loved him very much, and he believed that she was the success, the fruit of his workings, and he believed that she was the physical manifestation of Babylon, and she would be with him until he died. He accidentally blew himself up, I think in the early 50s. I want to say like 52, I could be wrong, when he was working on something in his lab. He blew himself up, but she was like very, very dedicated to him. And even years after his death, she would write about him fondly. She would go on to start some very interesting magical orders herself after he died. And she most famously appeared in one of Kenneth Anger's films. I think it was the inauguration of the Pleasure Dome. She acts in that film. That's Crowley's link to NASA.
Speaking of sex magic, there are rumors that Barbara Bush's mom was involved for some time with Crowley and various rituals.
Yeah, well, that is a rumor. The first time I heard it, I obviously kind of dismissed it myself as thinking that it was probably just a rumor, or maybe even a rumor perpetuated by Christian conspiracy theorists. But I actually have a really close friend who was kind of a magical teacher of mine who like really firmly believes that. And there are people that are I want to say that are noteworthy people that are good sources who do believe that firmly. And if you look at pictures of of Barbara Bush and Crowley next to each other, they really do look alike. So it's a possibility. It's a huge possibility. I mean, Crowley was very much a libertine, and he slept with a lot of women, and he conceived a lot of children. There's probably a lot of people out there that are descendants of Crowley and don't even know about it. So,
and that would mean that one of our presidents was a direct descendant of the Great Beast.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because definitely nowhere near as brilliant.
Do you know much about the chaos magicians of the 1980s? And up to today, there's Peter J. Carroll and Phil Hine.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of that movement. I think it's really interesting, and I think that it's really cool that they were able to put a modern twist on magic, and they were able to sort of laugh off a lot of the absurd sort of dogmatic qualities of orders like the Golden Dawn, and Astra Argentum, who have, at this point, I mean, those orders are over 100 years old, and they're a bit outdated. And so what I really admire about chaos magic is that they don't take themselves too seriously. It's extremely effective, and there's not as much of an emphasis on deities or deification. It's more like just getting results, through work, through sex magic. And yeah, I was reading, I think it might have been Phil Hine or something like that, said that, like, I remember the first time that I was doing a vanishing ritual, and I drew one of the pentagrams. They don't take themselves as seriously. There's a lot of sort of funny stuff mixed in there. My friend Timothy Renner, who I interviewed for my podcast, he's a really brilliant musician, and he's in a band called Stone Breath, and he's also a brilliant folk magician who lives and practices out of central Pennsylvania. I interviewed him for a podcast a while ago, and he was a member of IoT, which is an order that Carol was associated with. And he said that, like, a funny aspect of chaos magic is like, like you can just kind of sort of create your own gods when you need them. Like, say if you're having trouble with your laundry machine, you can pray to the god of laundry machines, and hope, because it's all manifestation. It all works the same way anyways. Or if you're cooking and something goes wrong, you can pray to the god of stoves. There's a brilliant kind of level of not taking itself too seriously when it comes to chaos magic, but it's also very powerful. There's a lot of sigilism. There's a lot of sex magic. I know that they had a lot to do with the popularization of piercings and things like that.
What sigil magic is, how you charge sigils, how you create them.
Sigil magic is basically it's a pretty simple form of magic and very effective. You would make a pictograph. You would make a symbol out of an intention. Sometimes it's as simple as, like, you write out something you want. Like, I want power, I want dignity. So you would take the words power and dignity, and you would omit the vowels, and you would omit reoccurring consonants, and then you would make a kind of shape out of the remaining letters, and you would form a pictograph. And then one of the most successful ways of charging that pictograph would be to have a positive orgasm, basically. Because there's the whole level of sexual experiences. There's very negative sexual experiences. I would say anything utilizing porn would be negative. Positive would be, a lot of times for me, I will imagine a goddess, particularly the goddess Nuit, because she represents limitless possibilities. She's an Egyptian goddess of the night sky. So I will focus on the goddess Nuit, and she can kind of become anything you want her to become. It's very easy to be sexually gratified by that concept. So once you achieve orgasm, all of your chakras are aligned. A light goes off in your head, and you're in a place where you are just your brain is silent, and that is a very, 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 very powerful space for manifestation. So at that point, you would start to visualize the pictograph that you created in your head. And by doing that, there's a very, very good chance that your intention would come true. There's other ways to charge too. I mean, I've read you can go for a long jog. I hear you go for a long jog, you exhaust yourself, and then visualize the sigil.
I've heard of people charging sigils at raves, dancing for 6-7 hours.
there has to be some kind of physical exertion. Yeah, there's been a lot of experiments like that with chaos magic. I used to be part of a chaos magic internet forum, and I would hear, there are still chaos magicians that get together and try to manipulate the outcome of elections, through things like that. There are still chaos magicians that get together and try to manipulate the outcomes of different political events or different historical events.
I've heard of chaos magicians getting together and trying to impact geological events too. Typhoons. To me, it's really it's a form of prayer. It's that line from yourself to the light that's in another place.
The microcosm to the macrocosm. Yeah, it's more powerful than just basic prayer. I think it's a lot more effective. Yeah.
Let me ask you one more question, Wyatt. Where do you think music comes from?
I think that it comes from, like, there is a higher self in a greater dimension. I think it's something that Crowley would call the holy guardian angel. And if you look at the tree of life and the different spheres, there's 3 spheres at the very top of the tree of life that are very, very transcendental: Bina, Chokmah, and Keter. And they basically represent this light, like this limitless light that is totally transcendental. And most people in their lives will never experience any form of this light, save for times of like deep, intense inspiration or love. And I think that inspiration comes down through the spheres in the form of this beautiful transcendental light. And I think that there is something godlike to it. I think that to every person there is like a higher self, a God self. There is a holy guardian angel, and I think that represents ourselves extended into a higher dimension. I think that we can only see limited glimpses of our bodies in this dimension. I think that there are higher dimensions in which we do exist in greater, higher forms, and we can get a hold of the higher forms of ourselves. And I think that this beautiful light exists as sort of a glimpse from this dimension into that higher dimension, and it comes down from the godlike part of ourselves, from the holy guardian angel. From it comes down from a higher place, and it doesn't necessarily belong to us. I think that people who get bent out of shape on egotism, saying, "Oh, I created this and it's brilliant," blah 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 blah, like they're not giving enough credit to the sort of God that really created it. They were just vessels. They were just mediumistic vessels for that. And I think that if you're lucky enough to have that inspiration, then you're a blessed soul, but you owe it to something higher. Something that is connected to you, but is also apart from you. But I also just wanted to, I know Thomas Carlson wanted me to give a shout out to 3 books of his that are coming out. It's called the Mephistophelian trilogy, and they're 3 books that are autobiographical in nature, that he wrote about his time growing up in Stockholm among other mystics and people that were into magic and necromancers. And the first book in that trilogy is called Amongst Mystics and Magicians in Stockholm. The second is called The Necromancer's Diary, and the third is called What's at the End of the Left-Hand Path. And they're very, very interesting books because they kind of show how he got into magic and some of his experiences in darker magic, and some really, really kind of dark and messed up and interesting stories about necromancy and stuff like that he's been involved in, actually bringing people back from the dead. And it's really, really cool. I think that you can buy the books separately, and I think they're also printing out like the trilogy as a whole book encompassing all 3 books.
Where can people find those?
You can find them on Amazon. You can basically just Google Thomas Carlson and any of those 3 books.
And where can people find your music, Wyatt?
Well, right now my music can be found on mothermckenzie.bandcamp.com, but for this new album, we will be setting up a bunch of stuff. We're going to be setting up a Bandcamp strictly for the new band, Dark Planets of Dead Dreams. We're also going to be setting up a lot of YouTube stuff. We're probably even going to try to get this stuff, sold on Apple Music and everything like that. So pretty soon, I think you'll be able to find Dark Planets of Dead Dreams pretty much anywhere.
I wanted to thank you for coming on today. It's been a real pleasure talking with you and catching up.
Yeah, always a pleasure.
We have another track off the album Dark Planets of Dead Dreams. It's called Train to Transylvania.
Sometimes we travel together, and others we travel alone. We always met in a sinister place we once called home. Sometimes we flew as the eagles, sometimes we swim as the sharks. We could destroy the world in a day, or build our own arks. When we met this time, my brother was calm, determined with a trace of mania. He held my hand and said adieu, and took the train to Transylvania. Long time ago, he booked his ticket to the price of his own soul. He couldn't undo it, he had to go through it. He's aware of the Dark One's role. We had traveled the world together, we had explored our own minds. We had passed through borders to see all the things we could find. To the music of Vivaldi I said, adieu, mon frère. Took the wrong path, we'll meet today again somewhere. Grim Reapers, the conductor who controls your ticket, let you enter and said to hurry. There is no rest for the wicked. Train, Transylvania. Sometimes we travel together, others we travel alone. We always met in a sinister place we once called home. Sometimes we flew as the eagles, sometimes we swam as the sharks. Destroy the world in a day, or
Thank you for tuning in to the Ye Olde Desert Scrounger Power Hour podcast. Join us next time for more guests and more special pleasures. This is Ye Olde Desert Scrounger, signing off.